Today is Mother's Day, and this video is to pay honor to the Divine Mother, which is Shakti, the feminine principle, which is very revered in Tantra. So a lot of you guys have heard about Shiva and Shakti and the union of Shiva and Shakti, the famous painting, the Yavyam painting, where the consort is sitting in the lap of the partner, and this represents the union of the masculine and the feminine. So in Tantra, and especially in Shaktism, worshipping the goddess and the feminine principle, the active principle, is a very big part of Tantra. While Shiva represents the consciousness and the awareness, or scientifically the particle form, Shakti represents the active principle, the form, and the Kundalini energy. It represents the wave principle. The 10 wisdom goddesses are all aspects of the Divine Mother. There's wrathful forms, there's sweet forms, and these are all manifestations of feminine energy, and they all carry lessons and special practices, special mantras that are helpful for overcoming various issues and for granting siddhis or powers. There are different schools of thought when it comes to deities in Hindu traditions. While some people look at deities as merely symbolic or representational, other people look at deities as actual. In reality, it doesn't make much of a difference because we create in our reality with our thoughts and with projection. So whether you believe in the actual form or the representation, the use of the worship and the ritual and the practice will regardless help you along your spiritual path. So here's a quick summary and description of the 10 wisdom goddesses in honor of the Divine Mother. The origin of the Mahavidyas, the great wisdom goddesses, has to deal with a story with Sati and Shiva. Sati had married the ascetic Shiva against her father Daksha's wishes, and when Daksha organized a yajna, or a sacrificial ritual, at his palace that she wanted to attend, Shiva did not want her to go, but she was upset and determined to go anyway, and when she went and felt insulted, she left in a rage and transformed by immolating her mortal body and taking the form of the goddess Adi Parashakti and taking on the various forms of the Mahavidya goddesses. Mahavidyas are the great wisdom goddesses, Maha meaning great and Vidya meaning wisdom or knowledge. The first goddess in the Mahavidyas is Kali, and she represents the power of consciousness in its highest form. She is the supreme of all the Mahavidyas and is the form from which all the other goddesses manifest. She is the Great Mother and a non-dual representation of the goddess, as she is the ultimate reality or Brahman and the devourer of Kala or time. Her skin is black because, like time and the void from which creation came, there was only darkness. She is a demon slayer who is known to have slain the demon Raktabija, who respawned more versions of himself with every drop of blood that fell to the ground, until she finally eliminated him, representing the power of consciousness over the repetitive and insistent thoughts in the mind, where one thought often begets another. She's usually artistically depicted holding the Abhaya Mudra, granting fearlessness, and the Varada Mudra, granting blessings. She wields the sword of wisdom and a head of a demon, symbolizing the death of the ego. Her collection of body parts represents the triumph over karma and rebirth, as body parts represent life and incarnation. Her necklace of skulls is a Varnamala, or garland of letters, each skull representing a sound of the Sanskrit alphabet. This also represents the manifestation of energy and vibration, but also death and impermanence. The second of the Mahavidyas is Tara, and she comes after Kali and is very similar to her in appearance. In Tibetan Buddhism, they have a more compassionate and benevolent depiction of Tara in white Tara and green Tara, which are depictions of loving kindness and compassion. Hindu Tantric Tara is much more fierce in appearance, very similar to Kali. Both are standing on top of Shiva, but Tara wears a tiger skin skirt and Kali wears a girdle of severed human arms. Tara stands in the Prayalidha posture with the left foot forward, and Tara also enjoys demon's blood. She holds a blue lotus and a flaying knife and a skull cap. These symbolize the duality of divinity, purity, and creation, as well as death and impermanence. Both Tara and Kali are associated with the cremation grounds, and Kali is usually described as black, whereas Tara is blue, with Kali having a blue depiction later on in relation to Tara. Tara is also known as Nila Saraswati or Blue Saraswati, and she represents wisdom and speech. Both Kali and Tara stand on Shiva symbolically. Shiva is the masculine balance that helped stop Kali from her bloodthirsty killing rampage when she began to kill so many demons that she lost control and killed everything in her path until Shiva made her aware. And Tara is said to have nursed Shiva back to life after he drank the poison from the churning of the ocean that was meant to give Amrita. The third Mahavidya is Tripura Sundari, and this stands for she who is most beautiful in the three worlds, or one that lives in three cities or states of consciousness, waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. She is the Tantric Parvati and the supreme goddess of the Sri Vidya Tantric tradition. She is represented by the Sri Yantra or Sri Chakra. The number 3 numerology stands prominent in her symbolism. She can also represent the 3 states of consciousness, awareness, existence, and eternal bliss. The noose she holds represents attachment. The gourd represents repulsion. The sugarcane bow represents the mind, and the arrows are the 5 sensory objects. She also represents the 5 basic elements of the universe: air, water, fire, earth, and space. The 4 legs of Tripura Sundari's throne are the gods Brahma, Vishnu, Rudra, and Shiva, representing creation, preservation, dissolution, and withdrawal. In her 16-year-old self, she is known as Shodashi. Shodashi also relates to the 16-syllable mantra, which consists of the Panchadashakshari mantra and a final seed syllable. She is also known in the form of Lalita, the one who plays. Tripura Sundari is a reminder of beauty, but not only physical beauty, but the beauty in divinity and divine perfection. The 4th Mahavidya is Bhuvaneshwari. She is the ruler of the universe, and she represents the physical cosmos. The universe itself is her divine body. She personifies all form and existence. Like Kali, she holds the mudras of fearlessness and blessing. Holding a noose and a gourd, she is the one who binds and sets free. She is the Empress of manifest existence, also known as Mahamaya, she whose magical power is great, and Sarvarupa, she whose form is all, and Vishvarupa, she whose form is the universe. She is worshipped for wealth, knowledge, and fortune, and she helps free her devotees from illusion, attachment, and suffering, as she helps one to have a universal understanding and cosmic vision. The 5th Mahavidya is Masta, she who is decapitated. And the story goes that Parvati cut off her head to feed her 2 attendants, Jaya and Vijaya, or in other versions, Dakini and Varnini. The blood spurting from her neck flows into 3 streams, one into her own mouth and the other into her 2 female attendants. Their colors are black and red, and she is white. And this represents the 3 universal gunas, or basic universal energies. This also represents the 3 energy flows of Ida, Pingala, and Shushumna. She stands on the body of Kama and Rati, who are the god and goddess of love and sensuality. And they are in sexual union, symbolizing her control over sexual desire and the focus on spirit over flesh. Kama and Rati also represent the Kundalini energy being aroused, and the blown off head is transcendental consciousness. Masta represents the self-sacrifice and connection between giving and receiving. And although she is bleeding, she is very much alive, representing the indestructible and eternal self. The 6th Mahavidya is Bhairavi, and this literally translates to frightful or terrifying. She's like an angry and wrathful mother who bestows protection on anyone who threatens her children. And this applies especially to obstacles on one's self-realization or anything negative and harmful to someone on their spiritual path. She is Tejas, passion and fire, flaming from the root chakra as raw Kundalini energy, and as tapas, the transmutation of heat and energy in a devoted spiritual practice. She represents speech and knowledge and is depicted holding a book. She's terrifying in her form, in which she provides protection against all negative and harmful influences to the true devotee. The 7th Mahavidya is Dumovati, she who is made of smoke. She is a peculiar goddess as she is associated with poverty, need, hunger, thirst, disappointment, frustration, humiliation, defeat, loss, loneliness, and sorrow. She is a widow, as she is said to have eaten Shiva out of hunger and anger. And so she represents loneliness and old age. And as you can see, she is in a stalled cart held by crows, which crows signify death and bad tidings. She is also known as Niriti, Jayeshta, and Alakshmi, which are all the negation of the positive traits of the goddess. Dumovati holds a bowl of fire in one hand and a winnowing basket in the other, and the fire symbolizes inevitable cosmic destruction, as all things shall pass away. The winnowing basket is used to separate grain and chaff, representing viveka, mental discrimination between the permanent and the fleeting. And her cart is stalled, representing an external life that is going nowhere. She represents the difficult passages in which one is dealing with so much difficulty and strife that they are forced to do nothing else but turn inwards and use their unpleasant experience as fuel to turn to the divine. She can be a useful goddess for consolation, for example, for widows, as she represents widows, and also those who are grieving or dealing with the more grim aspects of life, like extreme poverty or disease. She's a representation of non-duality and represents the lessons and fortune that are born out of misfortune. The 8th Mahavidya is Bagalamuki, known as Pitambara Devi, the goddess dressed in yellow, yellow being an auspicious and abundant color. She is associated with siddhis, occult yogic powers, particularly the power to stop an enemy. She is known for pulling out the tongue of her aggressors and silencing her enemies. She is usually portrayed pulling on the tongue of the demon Madan, who had the Vaksiddhi power, where everything he said came true, and he misused his power and used it to harm others. And so the gods and goddesses asked Bagalamuki to intervene, and she did. And when she stopped him, he begged her to allow him to stay at her feet, and she did. She represents the power of correct speech and action, as well as the ability to stop someone acting out of ego or harm. The ninth Mahavidya is Matangi. She is like Tantric Saraswati. She rules over speech, music, knowledge, and the arts. She is associated with sound and listening and is usually portrayed with emerald green skin representing deep knowledge. Matangi represents the power of the spoken word, Vaikari, as an expression of thoughts and the mind. She relates to the power of listening and grasping speech and converting it back to knowledge and thought. She governs over inner thought and expressions of inner thought like art, music, and dance. She presides over the middle part of speech, Madhyama, where ideas are translated into words, and Para Vaikari, the supreme word manifested through speech and that encompasses knowledge of the scriptures. Just as words label things and create stereotypes, she represents using the right words and going beyond the limitations of speech by embodying divine knowledge. This is why she's sometimes depicted with a parrot, which symbolizes song and speech. She represents the duality of purity and morality. She is somewhat of a taboo goddess as she keeps company with the chandalas or the untouchables, and her offering is uchista or leftover food. She embodies the forbidden transgression of social norms, and she's a representation that the overt pursuit of morality in and of itself is not actually in line with the divine order, which is non-dual. This is why she's very closely associated with the Chandalas, and she's even said to have made love to Shiva in the form of them both being Chandalas, which are the untouchables, the people who are on the outskirts of society, the outcasts. So she is a benevolent goddess that is inclusive. She helps one to see past the superficial judgments of societies. The 10th Mahavidya is Kamala or Kamalatmika, she of the lotus. All of the goddesses represent different states in the evolution of consciousness, where we started with Kali in the unmanifest void and then come all the way to Kamala, who is the manifest form of the universe. And so she represents good luck, money, fortune, prosperity, and abundance, and all of the physical attributes of the universe. Kamalatmika has a golden complexion. She is bathed by 4 large elephants who pour from kalashas, jars of amrita, nectar, associated with the sacred nectar of yogic scriptures. She is known as the Tantric Lakshmi. The lotuses have many meanings pertaining to purity and creation, and here they're especially representative of beauty and the feminine principle, but also female sexuality and fertility in a literal sense. The elephants symbolize loyalty, wisdom, and fertility. Kamala is the goddess that gives happiness, material comfort, and liberation. She symbolizes the tantric attitude that abundance and prosperity are gifts of the divine. Just as the lotus is rooted in mud but rises higher, so must we too enjoy our material prosperity but reach for the higher ideals of the divine. Each of these goddesses represent various traits of the divine feminine Shakti and are powerful allies when approached with reverence. I hope I've inspired you to connect more with the goddess, and thank you for watching.